Okay, I just hit
Uh,
record now.
yeah, the other guys can testify that whether I was lying or not. They can decide for it. So I'm just, because we don't have quorum, Angela, I'm just going to explain a bunch of stuff, and then when we get quorum, we can run through it and get the
Okay,
acceptance.
sorry about
The other,
that.
that's okay. The other 2,500 comes from Chorus Entertainment. We had an overpayment, and we had a credit with them that we finally said we're going to cash it in from years back, and so that cash came through and accounted for it there. So that's kind of the revenue side. Otherwise, I was expecting nothing. We knew those two things were outstanding, but they finally came in. So that's where the revenue side on December statements are up. The expense side is pretty straightforward. Salaries and benefits is strictly Angela, with some small changes for whatever we had owing for Taylor. Telephone and fax is a credit. Professional fees, there were two things that we paid out. One was some, well, three things. One was some work that Ontario Tech students did for the parking study. That was 1,000. We had some legal advice under the Edmanda situation. That was the second item, and last is the bookkeeper for professional fees. So all that totaled up to $2,300. Pretty straightforward. Website and some any town hall meeting expense and membership engagement expenses. It's just basically to run some of the electronic stuff that we have. And the expenses just flow through for a net deficiency of 5,300. So when I look at the surplus for the year, we're sitting at about $36,000, which pretty much is slightly ahead of budget. So we did pretty good. We held the line and everything showed up as we expected with some small changes here and there, but otherwise it was a pretty clean year from June onward, where we knew the budget changes happened, and we landed it right on the button. When I go through the balance sheet for the year end, so we asked Mohammed to stick around so he could do the audit and finish out the 2020 audit. So when I look at the balance sheet, cash on hand and bank statements are fine. Those all balance out. The one item that you want to definitely note out is, we have the opening reserve, what we purchased in capital, about $40,000 worth of equipment. Those are the domes and payments for the wreaths and the lights. And then with the assets we have on hand, with the amortization of capital assets, the net difference was 36,266 in terms of what we have left in terms of assets. So that gives you a perspective on valuation and what we own, and that gives you the idea of the surplus, which is that plus cash, how we ended the year, cash on hand. You add those two together, you get the 75. So we did pretty good for the year, notwithstanding all the COVID situation that we have. I had Angela include the January projection. So we didn't have all the costs in for January, but if you flip to that, what you'll see there is negative 10,000 on sponsorships and grants. We talked about that. We had a matching fund of 10 grand to do ramps. So because we don't have enough money to do that and go ahead with that program, we had to give back that grant. And so that's the negative 10 you're seeing in revenue. Expenses are very typical of what we have flowing through. Salaries and benefits, a projection to the year, to the month end for Angela. The rent and occupancy is a projection for January, which also includes some of February's, assuming this was going to be, this is assuming this was going to be the end of the BIA. So when we had Mohammed pull together the forecast, this is what we thought we would flag at the end of January to show some of the February projections included in there. And so that would leave us with a net, that would leave us in a net deficit of 18,000, which when we look at our bank statements, I think we have something close to 35. Am I correct, Angela, to start with?
Yeah, I'm also just letting Jeanette in, and that gives us quorum.
That gives us quorum. Great. Hey, Jeanette, how you doing?
I'm buying these dips. That way I can be in for the.
So, hey, Jeanette, how are you?
Hey guys, good morning, Vanu. I'm good, thank you.
Good. We officially have quorum. So I was just running through some of the financials. I'm just going to finish it off, but I'll cover it again for you, Jeanette, really quickly, where we're at. So Angela, with our starting statement in the bank account at 35 less 18, that leaves us about 20K.
Sorry, restate that. Yes,
So
I think so.
yeah, like I think you said we have 35 in the bank, right?
Yeah.
We're showing a net deficit of 18 going into pretty much the end of February projected out. That leaves us about, well, it's not 20, but whatever it is, 18, 17, right?
Yeah.
And we have one outstanding obligation, which is the litigation item, which should allow us to basically button down, well, we'll have two outstanding items, litigation and then how we close out the last employee, right?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, thanks, Jeanette, for coming in. We've done agenda item number 1. We've done agenda item number 2, so the welcome and opening. The agenda's in front of us, Jeanette, and we added one new item. Glenn wants to speak to a proposal he has for some asset purchases. Do I have a mover and a seconder for the agenda?
I'll move. Isaac.
Thanks, Isaac. Second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Michael. Any other changes to it? Hearing none, we got to go around the horn to accept it. Isaac?
Yes.
Jeanette?
I'm not sure what it is, so I'm not gonna say anything.
Sorry?
Sorry, what's the
It's
move for?
It's just the agenda.
Oh, yes.
Okay, thank you. Michael?
Yes.
Andrea, you joined?
Yes. Yeah.
Are you?
Yes,
Are you
and yes, I'm great. Happy New Year, everyone.
Happy New Year, Andrea. Thank you. Is that everybody, Angela? Glenn, sorry, Glenn.
Yes.
Great. Moved. And we're through. Any declarations of conflict? Hearing none, we're moving on. Agenda item number 5, approval of the minutes. The minutes are attached. Do I have a mover and a seconder for the minutes from the last board meeting?
I'll move.
I'll move.
Oh,
Okay, I've got Jeanette as mover and Glenn as seconder. Any additions, deletions, errors, omissions, any changes to that agenda item, to the minutes? Hearing none, can I go around the horn again for approval? Isaac?
I was missing from the previous meeting. May I abstain my vote?
Okay, thank you. Jeanette?
Yes.
Andrea?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Glenn?
Yes.
Carried. Thank you. Financial statements. Before Andrea and Jeanette joined, I was just kind of explaining to the rest of the group. There's 2 sets of statements, one for the year-end December and a projection for January and February. I'll need a mover and a seconder, and then we can talk about it. How's that? Can I get a
I'll
mover?
move.
I'll move the state.
Okay, thank you.
I'll
Isaac?
second the Mike. Yeah, I'll
Okay.
second the Michael.
Okay, Michael moves, Isaac seconds. So that's for the December year end. So for Jeanette and Andrea, I'm just going to repeat really quickly what we talked about in terms of the moving parts and pieces. If you look at the revenue line, we weren't expecting much on the top line, obviously, because no money was coming through. Since the levy is our biggest portion, and that stopped in June. But what you'll see there is about $4,500. And I explained that came from 2 sources. One, we had an outstanding payment for the government for the student side, for the student work that was covering some of our expenses. We knew that was coming, but we weren't sure whether the government was clawing it back. It finally came through in December, and it's about $1,800, and it shows up into that $4,500. The other was a credit note that we had with Chorus Entertainment for something we overpaid in a previous year. We understood we had a credit. We asked for that in cash back. It came through in December as well. So that's the revenue numbers that you see. On the expense side, you're seeing the very consistent things that we get. Salaries is Angela and closing out Taylor. We have a credit on the telephone line that we adjusted. The professional fees is something that we wanted to note. We did, the parking study was in there. some legal work around our one employee that we had some expenses for, and we asked the bookkeeper to continue on, and so we had some expenses there. I mentioned that we were going to keep the bookkeeper into the new year to close out and do the audit for 2020. Stephanie Sinnett's online from the city as an observer to the board. We'll talk about that when we get to the city item. And essentially, we're going to start the audit much sooner to get it out of the way and close out 2020. And so that's kind of the expense side. When you add those all up, we were a net deficit of $5,000 for the year. When you look at the year to date, we had projected a surplus in the budget for $35,000. We actually came in at 36. So we kind of landed this thing pretty much right on the nose. Great job, you know, with the COVID and everything we face. So any questions?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Good. Hearing none, we need a vote. Isaac?
Do we know, sorry, do we know what the Chorus Entertainment overpayment was for? What was that purchase on?
Angela, what was the event that we had that payment for?
I believe it was for both Bites on Bond and Cars on King back in 2018. It was a overpayment.
What were we paying them for? Do we know?
Yeah, it would have been TV ads during the event season for those two events specifically.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Good. Any other questions? Hearing none. Isaac?
Yes.
Jeanette?
Yes.
Andrea?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Glenn?
Yes.
Great. Carried. The second item is the January, February forecast. These are not official statements, so I don't need a vote. It's only for information. But I just wanted to show you when we start forecasting out exactly what we're facing, you'll notice two things. One, there's a $10,000 deficit on revenue, which means we had to pay back a grant. That was for the ramps and the disability, I think, what was it, the disability grant, Angela?
It was for the ramp, so it was our ramp access downtown.
The RAD program, right?
Yeah.
And so, you know, that was a matching fund. So we had to find $10,000 to match it. Otherwise, we could not fulfill it. So we decided to give it back, and it actually shows up in the January statement as negative $10,000 in revenue. Salaries and benefits is now Angela, and forecasting out January and February, are part of February. Rent and occupancy is both part is January and part February. Professional fees is Mohammed, and some membership expenses. Is that the internet, Angela?
So that would be things like Zoom. I think we had a MailChimp and Dropbox.
Right, and so we're taking
So things
care
like
of to
that,
the
yeah.
end. Yep. And so if you look at it, we're down $18,000. So again, when I started the conversation before we went into quorum, you know, we've got about 35K in the bank. There's 18 owing with expenses, with two outstanding items. The one is the legal matter with the former employee, and the other is how we close out with our current employee. So I think it leaves us enough room to basically deal with those items. So we're in a positive, we should end up in a positive cash slightly, or bang right on. We should be able to cover what we're facing unless anything else new comes in. Anything else, Angela, on that one?
No, I think that's pretty much it.
Good. So I don't need a mover and a second for that. It was just only for information, correct?
Yeah.
Item number 7 is the note from the city based on the January 25th meeting. Essentially what it says is the city council has approved dissolution of or repeal of the bylaw, which basically closes out the business improvement area organization from the city's perspective. And so with Stephanie on hand, Stephanie, I don't know if you want to comment on this particular item, what the city's plans are. So essentially the way that reads is the city's taking over the BIA, but there's a transition aspect that we're working through. Did you want to comment on that?
Sure. So following Monday's meeting and the decision of council, The senior leadership team at the city met on Tuesday morning to discuss what a potential transition plan would look like. I'm on the line this morning as the staff lead that was assigned to that role because a lot of the elements are predominantly financial in nature. For those of you who might not know who I am the Commissioner of Finance and City Treasurer. So naturally, finance is quite important to me. We have a number of items. Ivano, you will receive an email from me probably later this morning. I've received a list of items from the city clerk for documents that they want to obtain from the board. And there will be a transfer of the assets, I guess save and accept anything that might be sold or liquidated in advance of the closeout. And we'll also be in touch in terms of some of the operational aspects. So we have a cross-functional team that is trying to get a handle on all of the aspects that the city will assume from the BIA.
Great. Any questions from anyone? Okay.
Have we received anything from the city clerk? I know in past we've gotten emails kind of saying this is what your next steps are going to be in light of the decision of council. I might be getting ahead of myself for the agenda item for next steps for the board, but just wondering if we've got any communication or direction that way. I guess Stephanie just touched on that a little bit for the transition. But any idea what that actually looks like for us as far as officially dissolving the board and what a date that might take place on?
Yeah, it's a great question, Michael. So the city clerk did send the one communication that I attached. So it really did two things. One, it said it reaffirmed council's wishes to dissolve and repeal the bylaw, which they did and finalized that. And they went with option one, which is the city assuming the responsibilities going forward for the BIA, and Stephanie gave the kind of update as to what she's going to do. Other than that, I have no other correspondence from the city clerk. Stephanie, do you think we're going to keep getting stuff from the clerk, or is it now basically over to you?
I believe that most of your direction is going to come through me.
Okay, great. Does that help you out, Michael?
Yeah, okay.
Great. On the dissolution or dissolving the, dissolving the BIA, the corporation, we're going to go into the committee of the whole to talk about that because it relates back to that personnel item as well. Okay. Anything else, folks? Any other questions?
Just regards to going into in-camera session, anything that we can talk about outside of in-camera, we should try to parse that out as best as possible. So we can't just, because some elements might touch on the confidential piece, that's fine, but for everything that doesn't, we should be doing that out of camera as well.
And good point, Michael. So on the legal matter, I mean, we do have a legal matter in front of us now. I mean, that's going to impact dissolving the corporation. Should that go in camera or not? That's the only hiccup we have right now.
Yeah, I think we can maybe start in camera to discuss just that piece, and then out of camera, we'll be able to talk about the rest of it, or at least forming the plan of what we're going to be doing that should be done out of camera.
Okay. So why don't I move Glenn's addition above the legal advice on that point, and then we can decide to go in camera and then out of camera from there. Is that? I'm just going to change the order. So Glenn, you've got something that you wanted to add to the agenda. Do you want to speak to it?
So I have an offer from a company called Knocker and Son Paving Contractors. They are interested in buying the 2 shipping containers at the OPUC yard, and like whatever's in it is fine. It's so I have a formal letter of purchase. Basically just says they're interested in, they're offering to buy the 2 storage containers as well as the contents. They're offering $3,000 And so I have a check here for $33.90. It basically says I'm offering to purchase the containers as is and where is without any warranty. He's asking for 90 days to arrange for the pickup and the transportation of them. The removal and transportation solely at his expense. And I've included with my offer a check for the full amount dated for today, which can be deposited immediately on acceptance of this offer.
Okay.
So I don't know if the city, I didn't know if the city wants these assets or they prefer that we get rid of them. I don't know. Anyways, he's interested in the containers, so.
Okay. Isaac?
I was just going to ask, has there been any other interest in the containers?
Angela?
I haven't been talking to anyone about selling the containers or anything. So
Okay, obviously it's a loose end that would be ideal to tidy up, and if we can get some value, I suppose that's a good thing, right?
Have we decided whether we're going to sell those or transfer the assets to the city?
Well, it's up in the air. I mean, it's an asset that will generate cash.
Stephanie, what's the city's position? Does the city want the stuff or do they prefer to dispose of it?
The last discussion that we had about the assets that are currently with the BIA was that we were going to transfer them and put them into storage. I'd have to circle back with the team to see if they're still interested in doing that. We have identified a location in the city in which we could store the items, but we need a list of the inventory and the assets. If there's an offer to sell them, then that might be something that we would look at as well.
So Steph, one of the wrinkles in dissolving the not-for-profit corp is we cannot end up the organization with a net surplus. We have to give any assets that are left at the end of the dissolution period has to go to a not-for-profit.
I had a bit of a discussion with the city solicitor after we had our conversation the other day, and he was a little perplexed by that. So maybe you and I could circle back with him just to ensure that we're on the same page.
Yeah, from my perspective, if this board doesn't dissolve or start the dissolution, I mean, I think, is it the city's interest to do that anyways, if they take it over? Like, we don't want the corporation hanging out there, and I don't think you do either, right?
No.
So just from my perspective, my personal perspective, it's like either we initiate it or you guys can initiate it if you take it on. It just means, until the one legal item is cleared, nothing can happen. Only paperwork can be filed, but nothing's going to be approved. But if the city takes on that responsibility, I guess I'm indifferent. It's just a matter of time. That's all. Okay. And any other questions on the offer we have in hand? We can clear out. So Jeanette, does that help you out? We can clear out the assets if we like, or
Yes,
they get transferred. Either way.
My position would be that we don't transfer or move any assets or do anything from this point forward without a clear direction from the city advising us to do so. And I think that's really more the city's now prerogative to decide what happens with all of that stuff. So subject to Stephanie's comments where we need to provide an inventory to the city, I think we should do that, and we can pass on the offer and the city can decide to put that out as a request to advertise it more generally to the public. But I would say my position is we don't do anything further with any assets without a clear written direction from the city.
Okay. Anybody else?
Well, that's what it sounds like Stephanie is saying, not to do anything until they decide, right?
So I
don't know.
think,
Is that?
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Glenn.
So is that what Stephanie is saying?
Yeah, at this point, I'm going to have to get clarification on what the city's position is with respect to the assets and what we want to do with them. So I'm not sure who it was that was speaking about putting together the inventory, providing that to the city, holding on to the offer, and then we will provide you clear written direction on what to do with the assets, whether to dispose of them and accept the offer, or whether to transfer them to us.
So, I mean, what would happen if the board made the decision to accept the offer and sold the stuff?
I don't think we have the authority any longer to do that. The city bylaw is now repealed. The BIA, from a city perspective, no longer exists. So we're not a local board of council. I would, very strongly state that we as a board, we're having this meeting to wrap things up, but we don't exist anymore from a perspective of having authority to deal with assets would be my interpretation and understanding of where we're at right now. So I think we have to act with that in mind. I mean, it would be the same thing as if we said, well, we're going to plan this new event now in light of what's happened, or we're going to, we can't continue to act as a BIA any longer. That's been wrapped up.
And a comment I would just quickly add is whatever way the chips fall on this, my main concern is, as I heard already indicated, that the corporation get properly closed out. That to me, I think is something is very important.
And I wasn't clear. I didn't think that the assets were purchased under the corporation. Are the assets officially owned through the corporation? A lot of that stuff was purchased before we incorporated, was it not?
No, I don't think so. I think the ones that are predominantly on there that are still of value were purchased, in that period when we did the corporation, right? We can double check that, Michael, but
I'd say half and half.
yeah. So I'm hearing two things here. I'm hearing, and maybe Glenn, you can help me with this because it's your agenda item. So I'm hearing we provide a list to the city, including an offer to purchase, for them to provide direction on, so we can ask for that direction. It seems like the board would like to move on it if and only if the city approves it. I'm not hearing anybody say don't sell it. I'm hearing sell it if the city agrees to it. So that's kind of a communication over. I'm going to say to you, Stephanie, we'll put something together and then you can take it and give us direction. As long as the offer can be transitioned over, Glenn, I'm assuming the answer would be yes to that?
Yes.
Okay. And then the second
So maybe
item,
I would like, sorry, go ahead, Ivano, sorry.
Sorry, and then the second item was to Isaac's point. I've got the same interest in making sure that we, with that communication, we talk about the closure, our intent or our wishes are to close down the corporation properly, which I'm hearing Stephanie, they have the same interests and they're just trying to figure out, what that would look like in terms of how the assets move or not. From my perspective, we can sell the assets so nothing's left. That just turns into cash, and then what happens to that cash is still an issue with how you close out the organization. But I mean, our lawyer was going to deal with that, but if Stephanie's team picks it up and has the same interest, I'm good with that. It's just a matter of time. Nothing can happen with the one litigation item that still exists, right? Not till that closes out.
So maybe the motion is that, I don't know if this is under the appropriate agenda item, but in light of our discussion, I think we have a motion that a fulsome inventory be provided to the city, be prepared, and then provided to the city, documenting all assets and location of documenting all of the assets and their location and be provided to the city.
Yeah, and then I'd like to just tack on one piece in there. It seems like Glenn's offer is still in play, and we'll say we have an offer for these assets, right? I think for the most part, it's everything stored in the containers outside of the wreaths that are hanging on the poles. So I don't think that's in the container, but we would store them there too at some point, right?
And what about the pole wraps? Do we own those or?
No, that's a contract. So Stephanie's going to probably ask for that contract to renew it or not renew it. So that's taken care of. Anything else doesn't really have value. I think there's a computer that still has some value on the books as an asset. That's it. But we'll provide that list. I mean, right now it's the containers and the content. So if we take your motion, Michael, and just amend it to include the offer that's given for the assets that are, we'll identify what's located there, and we'll say that's what's being asked and purchased.
I agree with that amendment.
Okay. Okay. So we'll do that first amendment. Glenn, are you good with that or no?
What's the amendment? So what's the motion?
So the motion on the table is to provide documentation to the city that lists the assets that are currently owned by the organization that need to be dealt with.
And their location.
And their location. And specifically what's in the containers, I think, because that's what the offer deals with. And then pass along the offer for direction, the unsolicited offer that we have on the table, pass that along to the city for direction, and whatever the city decides we move forward with.
Okay. Yeah, the offer doesn't have to be all or nothing. It could be just the containers and not the contents too. So.
Yeah, but what we'll do, I think, Glenn, on that one, we'll take the offer as it sits, and then if the city rejects it because they say we don't want to dispose of it, that deals with the offer. Or if the city feels the offer is not valid, I guess they'll give us they'll give us direction on how to negotiate, or they can take the negotiations themselves and deal with the proposal themselves directly with the person who's making it.
Okay.
Good? Okay,
Yeah.
Glenn, can you move that?
Okay.
And Michael, are you seconding it?
Can I just have Angela read back what the motion is right now? The
Sure.
only concern I had with your language was the second piece of then saying, and then deal with it as the city requests. I think we just say, provide the inventory and assets and their location to the city, and also provide the unsolicited offer for the purchase of the shipping containers and its contents. And just ending it at that.
And ending
Period.
it at that? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Angela, do you want to read that back? You got to turn the volume up, Angela. We can hardly hear you.
Okay, sorry. A fulsome, so the motion to, or a fulsome inventory of prepared documentation of the assets and location to be provided to the city, and pass along the unsolicited offer to the city for direction. That's what I have.
Okay. Michael, is that good with you?
Yeah, I move that motion.
Okay. Sorry, I had Glenn move it. Can you second it?
Yeah, I'll second it then.
Great. Going around the tape. Oh,
I
sorry.
apologize. I couldn't hear it still.
Angela, you got to speak in the mic.
Okay. The motion is to provide a fulsome inventory of prepared documentation of the assets and their location be provided to the city, and pass along the unsolicited offer to the city for direction.
Perfect. Thanks. I heard that.
Okay, we got a mover and a seconder. Any other discussion? Okay, around the table, Isaac,
Yes.
Annette,
Yes.
Andrea,
Yes.
Michael,
Yes.
Glenn,
Yes.
carried. Thank you very much. On the second motion regarding the closure of the BIA, because that's now we're kind of dealing with next steps. I guess I'd like the direction from the board to identify our interests to the city and ensure their interests are the same around properly closing out the corporation of the BIA.
So what's the motion you're proposing?
I'm going to hand it to the city. I'm just going to say, if our interests are aligned, you will take this on, because I don't think we can proceed with it. We're kind of on item number 8. The legal advice that we're receiving right now is we can't close it out properly, given outstanding litigation that's now filed.
So Ivano, to your point, I would really like to have a conversation, you and I, with the city solicitor to ensure that we are proceeding down the path that we want to affect the dissolution of the corporation.
Okay, can I get that motion from the board to act in that direction? Because Stephanie, I mean, I don't have authority to really deal with this thing, and I don't think the board may get together again anytime soon with a quorum. Um, I think we want to close this out, but we know we can't close it out in time, right? Is that okay with you, Stephanie? If I have that direction?
Yes, because we're going to need some assistance as we move through this process. And from a governance perspective, I look to you as the chair of the board to provide the city with whatever assistance we might require. I also think that Angela, from a staff perspective, will also need to participate in this process to assist us with the day-to-day operations of the BIA until everything is effectively transitioned over. And I suspect that all of those activities will be concluded, with the possible exception of the legal matter, by the end of February. I've also spoken with the audit partner at Deloitte, and I've asked them to move up the audit for 2020 to be able to get that matter taken care of before the bookkeeper is no longer on contract.
Okay. So Michael, do I need any motion to proceed along those lines? Because I'm sensing that the city's interests are aligned with ours. They want to close out the corporation. But we can't, I don't think we can, we're a bit of a stalemate. We can't proceed with that other than file the paperwork, unless we want to file the paperwork.
I don't see the need for a motion. You're just gonna give the city what they want and answer their questions, that's all.
I just want to make
Yeah.
sure we deal with the closure part of it. Like if they don't dissolve the BIA, it's not necessarily what this board wants, right?
Well, the BIA has been dissolved from a city perspective already.
Yeah, but the corporation still exists.
Right. Yeah.
But
So
is the
Go ahead.
concern that the city's not gonna do that? I'm not certain what your concern is.
I just want the assurance that they will, right? We have one last effort here. We can close it out ourselves, or we can hand it off to them.
Well, I mean, we can't propose a motion and vote on it that forces the city to do anything. So your concern is that we do it ourselves then?
Well, we could file the paperwork, right? It doesn't mean it's in effect. We just file the paperwork, and we've gone as far as I think we can go. That's an option in front of us now.
Well, you've already raised some concerns that said that we can't do that until certain things are taken care of. So
Yeah, we can file the paperwork as I guess my starting point. It doesn't mean it's going to close the corporation. That has to be picked up eventually. Or we can let the city file the paperwork. It's a small matter of cost. I don't know that the city is going to balk at the cost side of it. I just want to make sure they follow through with it.
So
Yeah, okay.
so you want a motion to direct that the city take over the responsibility of dissolving the corporation, is that?
no, I think what's being proposed, or what's happening, especially in light of the comments from Stephanie, was that what they want to do, what the city is wanting us to do, is to meet with them first and the city's legal counsel and discuss and propose a plan for moving forward before the board take any concrete action. And I think what Ivano's saying is, okay, we hear that suggestion, but considering this will be, it'll be difficult to get the board back together for another meeting and be able to achieve quorum, that there may pose some issues for us as far as dissolving the corporation goes if we punt this off down the road. Is that right, Ivano? Is that?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to close the loop. I'm acting on behalf of the interests of the corporation and the board. I think we all want to close it out. I just want to make sure before we stop meeting and deciding these things, that's the last bit I think we can do right now. We have a choice. We either file the paperwork or we get a commitment from the city to take that on and leave it with them eventually. It's not a big ticket item with costs. It's just a liability exposure item that just has to be done, right? Our names are still listed in the corporation until it dissolves, right?
Yeah, I would say that, convenience of the board members aside, that we have legal obligations, and I don't think we can just, I'm not a corporate expert on this, so I would defer to our legal counsel's advice, but would say we would probably be in our best interest to just do as was suggested and requested. And if we need to meet again for one final administrative piece, then we would do it at that time in a 15-minute quick meeting to close that out. But I would say my piece or my suggestion would be to have you meet as suggested by Stephanie with the city and the solicitor, make sure that our interests and plan going forward are aligned, and that plan is formed, and then take the action.
Okay.
So yes, it's inconvenient, and it would be nice to have that already wrapped up now and done and be able to conclude everything at this meeting, but I don't think that is the prudent decision right now, and putting my own convenience and the board members aside, that I think we should probably get that information first, make the plan first, and then take the next steps after we have all the information we need.
Okay, so Michael, that's kind of like a long-winded way of going. You're giving, and maybe it's in the form of a motion. I just want to make sure I hear everybody on this one. To have me meet with the city and align our interests and report back.
Correct.
Okay, I'm going to take that as a motion. Are you good with that, Michael?
Yes.
Okay, Michael's raising it. Do I have a seconder?
Yeah.
Thanks, Glenn. Any conversation, any discussion, any amendments?
My one comment would be, do we have genuine concerns that we would risk not being able to achieve quorum to further discuss that once, Ivana, you've had a chance to discuss with the city?
Yeah, that's a concern, but that doesn't mean that the city can't act it. I think we're just left with one thing, which is basically city taking it on.
Yeah.
But at least we'll have it. We'll have information. How's that?
Okay. Fair enough.
Yeah, our negotiating position gets reduced after that. Again, it's pending. It's pending the entire board still sticking around, right? I don't know what you folks want to do after this, but yeah, that is a risk. We will not have quorum to basically act on these things, but we'll have some information. How's that?
Yeah.
Well, again, I can't give any legal advice out to anybody here, but I would caution against just tendering resignations before the obligations of the corporation have been met. I think that wouldn't be a wise decision for anyone to do that, and to consider the ramifications of those actions if anyone was deciding to do that. I mean, we're not going to have to do any work. Realistically, it's just having one more meeting to close everything out in a proper way that protects the interests of the corporation, as we're obligated to do as directors, and as directors both the corporation and as the BIA. So that would be my little piece, I would say, to everyone there. Take it as you will.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Michael. Any other questions or conversations? Okay, hearing none. If you can give me that direction, I'm just going to go around the table. Isaac?
I will. I'll vote yes.
Jeanette?
Yes.
Andrea?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Glenn?
Yes.
Carried. Okay. That deals with number 8, Glenn's item. And I think it deals with next steps as number 9, unless anybody has any issues there. I think we've wrapped that all up. Okay, then the other is just to go in camera.
Okay, so because Glenn is here, I will just leave the room and stop the recording.
Okay. Can I get a motion to go in camera?
Yeah.
Thanks, Glenn. Michael? Great. Just going around, Isaac?
Yes.
Jeanette?
Yes.
Andrea?
Yes.
Michael? Can't hear you, Michael. Sorry.
Yes.
Okay, Glenn?
Yes.
Great. We're in camera. Thanks, Angela. Thanks, Steph.